No, not a Saturday morning cartoon. We've been reviewing plenty of those. No, I'm talking about a cartoon adapted from a live-action show. As I pointed out a long time ago, it was a pretty big trend back in the 70s and 80s for networks to take a primetime show that wasn't necessarily made for kids, although there were still quite a few things back then that were safer for them to watch than today, and make some type of animated adaptation of them. Because of this, and to separate themselves from the original source material, pretty much all of them were given entirely new settings. Granted, the Genie cartoon I reviewed years ago was essentially its own entity that had really no connection to I Dream of Jeannie whatsoever, but a lot of the other shows were directly based off of their live-action counterparts, just put into different scenarios to try and differentiate the two. Which is why we got Laverne and Shirley joining the army, the Dukes of Hazzard racing across Europe, and yeah, trust me, if I get the episodes one day, we'll get into that. Which then begs the question, why apply this thing to adapting a show that was already primarily aimed at kids? Premiering in 1984, Punky Brewster was kind of like a 1980s Little Orphan Annie, featuring Soleil Moonfry as an abandoned orphan girl taken in by a crotchety photographer named Henry Warnemont, and how their presence affected the lives of each other. The show ran for 2 years on NBC before moving on to first-run syndication for an additional 2 years. And I admittedly never really watched it. What I did watch was the animated version of Punky. Produced by both NBC and Ruby Spears, the cartoon debuted on NBC Saturday Morning in 1985. It was also titled just Punky Brewster as well, but has since become known as It's Punky Brewster. It's definitely a polarizing show, drawing ire from some fans of the original that call themselves Punky purists. But why is that? Let's find out as we look at the animated series, It's Punky Brewster. Like its counterpart, the show centers around our spunky orphan title character, her foster father Henry, and her 3 friends, all of which were voiced by the same actors, which means we still get Soleil Moonfry as Punky and George Gaines as Henry.
That Bigelow job must really have Henry tied up.
Remember who feeds you, Punky.
You always said I should do my best, Henry.
So yeah, it's pretty much exactly like the original, except for one little difference.
I ran to the end of the rainbow's eye. There wasn't any pot of gold. And there I found a new friend who's 2 feet tall, 140 years old. Plumber isn't open, he was left behind. And a lot like Punky, he was one of a kind.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those shows. Now, I'll give credit where it's due, as while this series also has the standard explain the setup in the title sequence that was common at this time, it did include an episode that actually explains further where this new little furball came from. His name is Glomer, and he comes from the land of the leprechauns called Shandoon at the end of the rainbow, where his kind help leprechauns collect gold nuggets. You know, I can think of one leprechaun that could use those guys' help guarding his cereal. So this magical little, Glomely, as they're called, left the rainbow out of curiosity and got himself stuck in our world when the rainbow left without him. So just like Henry took in Punky when she didn't have a home, Punky takes in Glomer. Of course, the difference here is that she apparently has to hide Glomer from Henry.
Henry.
Punky, I forgot my keys.
Quick, hide Glomer. You got it.
Yeah, this is one of those story elements, especially in cartoons, that does kind of bug me. It's the same as with Denver the Last Dinosaur, when Wally and his friends were always trying to hide Denver from their parents. Look, I can understand it when the Tanners have to keep Alpha secret from the neighbors and other people, but Punky having to keep Glomer hidden from her own foster dad?
You're gonna have to be a secret, even from Henry. Somebody might take you away.
There's your big lesson from cartoons, kids. Never trust your parents. And really, if there is one character that kind of gets the shaft in this series, it's definitely Henry. Again, I admit not watching the live action show when it was first on, and I definitely couldn't watch the entire series in preparation for this review, but it wasn't hard to see what the gist of it was from what I did get to see. It was about Henry needing Punky as that missing piece in his life, someone to care for and open up his confined world, as much, if not more, than Punky needing him as a parental figure. So for this series, Henry not only gets cast aside, but is pretty much treated as an antagonist, always appearing mostly to punish Punky for her antics.
Maybe next time you'll think twice before you stow away.
I'll think 100 times.
Well, at least we came out with enough money for the rent.
Is there any leftover for a maid?
Keep polishing. Keep polishing.
Part of me gets the feeling these cartoon producers always made the parents out to be the bad guys just to take out their own frustrations with parent groups censoring their shows. Though this show still doesn't hold a candle to how the adventures of Pete and Pete portrayed adults. The only other character that appears as a regular antagonist would be Punky's friend, Margot, a spoiled rich girl who it does seem like Amy Foster plays much like she did in the live-action version, if a little more over the top. Which still begs the question of why Punky would hang out with her if she's always gonna be Little Miss Prissy Pants.
I'd rather take out the garbage than go to the party with that wimp. If you go to the party, we can come too. And then I can talk to Avery's dad about giving Henry his job back. Well, I'm sorry about Henry, but I do have my reputation to think of. What if I told you Avery's dad is a publisher of Beauty magazine, and they're always looking for cover models?
What, do Punky and the other kids let her hang out with them just so they look like better people by comparison? But while our friends Margot, Alan, and Cherie are still in this series and do often have some involvement in the plots, it does seem like they're often pushed into tertiary characters. The show is pretty much centered exclusively around Punky and Glomer and all of the trouble he gets both of them into with his magic powers.
Hey, where's my hot dog?
Glomer, you can't just take people's food.
No, Masked Rider flashbacks! Okay, though I will give credit that Glomer isn't as annoying as Furbus was. The first reason is they clearly were going for a straight-up comedy in this series, as opposed to shoehorning such a character into an action show. At least here, Glomer is meant to be integral to the plots. Also, while he may screw things up and cause trouble, it's still made more clear that he means well and actually wants to help Punky and her friends, even if he's not always successful in doing so. Also, being a cartoon, there were definitely more chances for the writers to create more fantastic scenarios that they were clearly going for, even if they were pretty much formulaic by cartoon standards at the time. They often center around Glomer trying to use his powers to grant Punky whatever wish she wants.
If she'd stop jogging for just 1 minute.
60 seconds and counting.
Glomer!
But he can't grant the wish of the Cubs winning the World Series. Wishes are different than miracles. So yeah, you can probably see where this series goes. It uses the plot device of Glomer's powers to create just about every fantasy-centered storyline that you had to have in an 80s cartoon. Episodes like Glomer making an evil clone of Punky, one episode of Glomer becoming a giant, and another where he shrinks Punky and her friends. Henry gets amnesia. Glomer trades minds with one of Punky's friends. Multiple time travel episodes. Wait, are these the storylines from Punky Brewster or Passions? And even one episode where Glomer changes Punky into a grown-up. So many Soleil Moon Fry boob jokes and only my standards keeping me from using them. There was also one episode that basically turned the show into an 80s adventure cartoon when Glomer finally got to go back to Shandoon and took Punky and her friends with him. Wait, how did he know that Rainbow wouldn't take them to Ponyland or Rainbow Land? Or result in them getting run over by Mario in a go-kart? They arrive in Shandoon to find everyone has been put to sleep because this monster has stolen their magic alarm clock. They get attacked by this turtle, vulture, rat, dragon thing, and Punky ultimately destroys the monsters by Glomer giving her his powers.
You can't do this to the great Grimly.
You're right. Glomer and I can. All right, we did it!
Oh, and the whole thing was all just a dream. How did that storyline not get made into an NES game? Would probably still be better than anything published by LJN. The series had one full season of 13 half-hour shows, usually containing 2 episodes each. Then the second season had about 10 original episodes mixed with repeats from the first season. The reruns were put back on NBC Saturday in 1988 to replace a canceled show called Too Hip for TV.
You are the toast.
That's most. And so are you, Glomer.
I am? Thanks, Punky.
And yeah, it's Punky Brewster. It's stupid, but it's kind of an understandable stupid. It definitely deviates from what the theme of the first series was and has a ton of formulaic plots, but as far as the shows that were retooled into cartoons go, it is one of the least annoying. Upon further review, maybe it was best to use a kid's show as the basis for an adaptation like this, as it serves as wish fulfillment for a lot of adventures kids wish they could have using a character they were already used to. If it did annoy die-hard fans of the original series, they can just pretend it doesn't exist and stick with the original cut that they know and love. Just don't check out the special features on the DVD release on the live-action series, as episodes of this cartoon were included among them. But hey, I would probably still take this over the show its reruns got paired with in 1989.
Maxie, the rotating show. Good times are happening in Maxie's world.
One at a time, people. One at a time.